Hey students, I've prepared a lesson today on tied notes. This is when you have two notes of the same frequency tied together to make one larger note. So if you had two pieces of rope and you tied them together, you would just have one longer piece of rope. It's the same thing. You could do this with individual notes, or you could do it with chords, which is what we're going to do today. This is actually a level 3 in my series of strumming patterns. If you missed levels 1 and 2, feel free to go back and check those out. But we're moving forward with tied notes today. First thing you want to do is make sure you got your quarter notes pretty solid. We're going to take a G chord, play along with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? No tied notes there. Every beat had its own strum. But now you have this curvy line connecting beat 3 to beat 4, which means you're going to strum beat 3 like normal, but on beat 4, you're just going to let it ring out. You will not strike the guitar again. If you look at the bottom, you'll see the downstroke arrows. That fourth arrow is grayed out. I grayed it out as a reminder that you are not going to hit the chord again on beat 4. Just let it continue to play. It sounds like this. Get your G chord ready. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4. Very good. Now we have a quarter note on 1, but beats 2, 3, and 4 are all eighth notes. There's no tie in here, so just follow the rhythm as written with your G chord. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Now let's put a tie in there. The tie appears on the and of 3, and it's tied to the beginning of beat 4. So the grayed out arrow is on 4, but on the and of 4, you'll strike again. So let's hear what that sounds like. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Did you get that last upstroke on the and of 4? We move the tie now to the and of 2, and that's tied to the beginning of beat 3. Now on the and of 3, you'll come back in with that upstroke. Let's do it together. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. We have a quarter note strum on beat 1 as well as beat 2. That's a quarter note strum on beat 2, tied to the beginning of beat 3, and then you're coming in on the and of beat 3 to finish it out. That's a long pause after beat 2. I'm going to remind you of that because you might be tempted to make beat 2 eighth notes, and it's not. So that's a full beat on 2, tied to the beginning of 3. That's a very long strum. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Let's apply this knowledge of tied notes to the song Hey Ya by Outkast. I'm going to annotate a few things here just to kind of help you through this and to make sure you understand what we're looking at. So on the top, all the D's and the U's, that's just downstroke, upstroke. But what I really want you to look at is right here, the G chord. You gotta know what chords to play, right? So on that G chord, you're going to come in on beat 1, and then you have these eighth note strums on beat 2, and here's the tie. Because the tie goes from the and of 2 into beat 3, but then the upstroke on the and of 3 is when you come back, and you finish that out with a 4 and. So where's that tie? On the and of 2, connecting to the beginning of beat 3. That's what you're going to do with your G chord. Let's play that together. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. One more time. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Now we're basically going to do the same thing with a different chord because the chord changes to C, but if I look at the beats, beat 1, 2, and connected to beat 3, come back in on the and of 3 and finish out with a 4 and. So same thing, right there, the and of 2 and the beginning of 3. When you go to the following measure, it's still a C chord and it's still the same strumming pattern. 2 and. Here's your 3, back on the and of 3, and finishing it out with the 4 and, right there. So let's see if we can play the first 3 measures 1 bar of G, 2 bars of C. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Now it's going to get a little bit trickier. Let me explain what's happening here at the bottom. Right here you have this fraction 2 over 4. Well, that number 2 tells you there's 2 beats in the measure. That's different than everything else because we had 4 beats per measure previously, and that's what we've been working on this whole lesson. So just for this one moment, we're going to switch to 2 beats. So the way we would count this D chord here is 1, 2, and. Now there's no ties or anything, but you just stop counting after 2, go back to 4/4 time. So now we're going to have full 4 counts of an E chord, E major. So it's 1, 2, and tied to the beginning of 3. You have your and, finish with 4 and. So this rhythm should start looking familiar. It's just the chords are changing. And then your E chord at the very end is the exact duplicate of what we just did. So it's 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So let's take it from the bottom. I'm going to start right here. And that's only 2 counts from that D chord moving into the E major and finishing it out. Here we go. 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Now we have to put the whole song together. So we're going to take it from the top. We're going to do both lines, whole thing. Here we go. 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 4, and. Yeah, that 2/4 time signature, that little quick change in there, that's probably harder than the tied notes, wouldn't you think? All right, so we're going to try the whole thing one more time, but just a little bit faster. And I'm going to count to 4 before we start. So that way we start at the same time at the same speed. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Yeah, it gets a little tricky in there. But you can see how tied notes make your playing sound a little bit more interesting, a little bit less robotic. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I want to make more lessons like this. Please subscribe, like, and share. And I would love to hear comments. Tell me if you've been able to follow along with the series, what you think about it, what you want me to teach you next. Give me any kind of feedback. Just say hi. Any of that would be much appreciated. And I hope you have a great day. Happy practicing.